I never thought a quiet family holiday could turn into the moment I finally saw my own child as a stranger. One sentence from her cut deeper than any fight we ever had. She told the entire room I had never lifted a finger for my grandkids while standing there holding something she took from me. That was the instant I knew the line had been crossed, and there was no turning back. If you've lived through something like that, tell me your story in the comments. Chapter 1. The Hidden Boxes. The cold in the storage shed clung to my clothes the moment I stepped in. I hadn't planned on being there long. A couple of wrenches had gone missing at the shop, and I kept a few spares in the back. I reached for the shelf and my boot caught on something that shouldn't have been there. The stumble forced both hands against the wall before I managed to steady myself. Several large boxes sat where my tool crates normally rested. Their bright wrapping paper didn't belong in that corner. A strange pressure spread across my chest as I pulled one forward. The others had been stacked in a hurry, edges mashed together, as if someone wanted them hidden, but didn't care how they looked. The spot where I'd stored my grandchildren's Christmas gifts was empty. I opened one of the boxes. The corner had torn. A folded receipt I'd tucked beneath the tape was gone. It took a few seconds to find it shoved under an old paint can, bent and stained, but unmistakably mine. I picked it up and stared at the date, the price, the item list, everything I'd chosen with weeks of thought. My phone buzzed. Lydia's name filled the screen. Her tone carried a nervous edge. "Dad, did you leave anything in the shed? Don't open the boxes in the back. I'll handle it later." A long breath formed in my throat, but the words never left my mouth. She spoke too fast, as if worried I had already seen something she didn't want explained. When she stopped to wait for an answer, I kept my voice even. "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine. Just don't touch anything back there. Please." The call ended quickly. I stood alone with the phone still in my hand, staring at the dark gap on the wooden shelf where the gifts had been. Nothing about it felt like a misunderstanding. The pieces fit together too neatly. The shed door shut with a dull thud. Locking it brought no comfort. A habit I'd carried for years, choosing peace over confrontation, rose like an old reflex. I stood in the yard long enough for the December air to chew at my fingers. Walking back into the house, I moved as if nothing had happened. Lydia wasn't there, and no one else needed to hear what was sitting heavy under my ribs. Keeping it to myself bought me time to think. Maybe that was all I hoped for in that moment. The drive to the parts store usually calmed me. Routine helps a mechanic stay grounded. Aisles filled with grease metal, the smell of old rubber. Today, none of it worked. Each aisle reminded me of the missing tools. Each aisle nudged me back to the shed. My mind replayed the stack of boxes, Lydia's voice, the way she rushed through her words. On the way home, the mountain sat still in the distance, and traffic crawled along the familiar Boise roads. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but my thoughts circled one place, only the shed, and everything removed from it. I pulled into the lot behind my garage and parked. The engine clicked as it cooled. Keys stayed in my hand longer than they needed to. Whatever this was, it wasn't small, and the weight of that settled into me before I even stepped out of the truck. Chapter 2. The Shift in the Room. Lydia's driveway was full when I pulled up. Her husband's relatives had beaten me there, and by the sound of it, the party had already gathered steam. Stepping through the door, I caught the tail end of her voice carrying through the living room. "And I handled all the gifts this year. Every single one. Took weeks to get everything right." A round of approving murmurs followed. Someone patted her shoulder. Another said she'd outdone herself. A few heads turned toward me with a kind of puzzled judgment, like they were still deciding how disappointed to feel. No one asked if I needed a seat. Standing near the staircase gave me a clear view of the room. Lydia glowed under the attention. Her hands moved animatedly as she described how exhausting the shopping had been, how she stayed up late wrapping just so the kids would have something special. She never glanced in my direction. Maybe she didn't dare. I kept my coat on. The house felt warm, but not welcoming. Children weaved between adults. A couple of aunts whispered something while their eyes flicked toward me, then away. One of them murmured, "Some folks just don't step up," and the other nodded. A small pulse hammered along the base of my neck. Not anger, something older. A slow ache that comes from seeing a pattern repeat and realizing you let it happen. Movement spilled out of the kitchen. Every counter was crowded with dishes in various stages of preparation. Two of Lydia's in-laws darted back and forth, exchanging updates about casseroles and dinner rolls. Their conversation drifted toward gifts, and almost immediately the same version of Lydia's story echoed again. "She bought everything on her own this year, wow. That girl has a heart of gold. She's the only one thinking ahead." Each sentence tightened something in me. The story gained life with every repetition spreading through the house until people accepted it as fact simply because they heard it enough times. Lydia finally spotted me and waved as if nothing were off. "Dad's here," she announced brightly. "We were just talking about how busy this week has been." I met her smile with a small nod. The lie sat in the room like smoke. Navigating through the kitchen, I reached the back porch for a moment of space. Before the door closed, Lydia's voice rose again. "Dad, we might need your shed later. There's no room left for the extra supplies. I can stack them out there if you don't mind." Her request hit me harder than the whispers. Not the words themselves, but the assumption beneath them. As if my tools, my storage, my work were nothing more than overflow space for her holiday performance. "You already moved a few things around," I answered. She blinked quickly, almost startled. "I just organized a bit." "You always say you don't have time." A couple of her relatives paused their meal prep to watch the exchange. Lydia's voice softened to performed concern. "Let's not make it a thing, Dad. It's Christmas." My jaw tightened. Saying anything sharp would only feed the version of the story she'd built. There was no winning that kind of argument in a room full of people who had already chosen which narrative felt easier to believe. My phone vibrated in my pocket before I replied. Marianne's name appeared on the screen. "What's going on with you?" she asked the moment I stepped onto the porch. Her tone wasn't harsh, just direct the way someone sounds when they've watched you shoulder too much for too long. "Nothing urgent," I answered. "Just got here." "That's not what I heard," she said. "Someone told me you were off lately. Thought I'd check in." A long breath steadied me. "People talk," I said. "They fill gaps with whatever works." "Yeah, but what do you say?" she asked. "I haven't decided." She paused, letting the silence speak for both of us. "Don't disappear into it," she said softly. "Call me if you need to step out." Her call grounded me more than the cold air outside. When I returned to the living room, the gift conversation had spread again, louder this time, like an engine revving. One of Lydia's cousins commented, "Kids are lucky she does all this. Not every grandparent shows up." Another nodded toward me. "You working too much again, Sam?" I managed a small smile, something like that. Lydia laughed lightly, keeping the mood lifted. "He's trying. We're all stretched thin." The statement sounded kind, but it boxed me into the role she needed me to fill, the man who meant well, but rarely delivered. People accepted it without blinking. No one noticed the way she avoided my eyes. Dinner prep wound down. Children circled the living room, eager for the first round of gifts. Lydia directed everything who sat where, which box to open first, how the photos should be taken. Her confidence grew with each compliment. Then one of the younger kids barreled toward me with a toy still in its packaging. "Look what Aunt Lydia got me," he chirped. "She said she picked it because I like trucks." The toy wasn't random. I'd chosen it weeks ago, after he told me he wanted something that looked like Grandpa's tow rig. Hearing my daughter take credit for that choice hit harder than anything earlier. "That's a good one," I said, steadying my voice. He held it up proudly, waiting for me to admire it. "It even has the little hooks you use," he added. A step backward came before I realized I'd moved. The weight in my chest shifted again, denser this time. Lydia's laughter floated from the center of the room, while her story kept growing around her. My eyes stayed on the unopened toy, and for a long moment I couldn't bring myself to say anything else. Chapter 3: Cracks in the Story. The house grew louder as more relatives poured in, so stepping out to the backyard felt like the only way to breathe. A handful of guests stood near the patio, heater cups in hand, talking about work kids, anything that filled space. Someone waved me over. Lydia's friend, a woman I'd met a few times, grinned as I approached. "Sam, that truck set you got for Lucas is great. When did you pick it up? I saw Lydia opening one of your boxes last week when she stopped by your place." Her words sliced through every excuse I had tried to build for Lydia. There was no miscommunication. She had been in my shed with a spare key, helping herself to whatever she wanted. "When did you see her?" I asked. "Oh, maybe Tuesday. She said she was grabbing a few things you'd bought early." Her tone held no blame. She genuinely thought it was normal. The others nodded along casually. People who barely knew me were already repeating Lydia's version of events without knowing they were doing it. One of the men added, "She's always running around doing stuff for those kids. Good thing you let her use your place." A pressure built behind my ribs again. Not the same as before, this time sharper, a kind of clarity. Years of giving her leeway had blurred boundaries so much that strangers assumed my property was an extension of her house. Someone handed me a drink, but I didn't take it. My hands felt full already with the weight of everything I'd just heard. Lydia stepped through the sliding door and scanned the group. Her face shifted the moment she spotted me standing among them. A quick flash of worry surfaced before she arranged her features into something soft. "Dad," she said, approaching with a trembling smile, "you didn't tell me you were coming out here. I thought you were talking to the kids." One of her friends laughed. "We were just saying how sweet you are for all the work you put into Christmas, Lydia." I watched her soak in the praise. Then she looked at me, gauging what I'd heard. To cover herself, she jumped in before the silence gathered momentum. "Dad gets mixed up sometimes," she explained lightly to the group. "He's been leaving tools all over. I think he forgot where he put the gifts. I found them while I was helping him clean." No one questioned her. They nodded with a sympathy I hadn't asked for. The taste in my mouth turned metallic. She continued, layering more. "He worries a lot. Probably thought someone moved things without telling him. I keep telling him to let me help." The shift in tone was practiced. She had done this before, painted herself as the overwhelmed daughter caring for the aging father who misplaces things. The story slid neatly into their assumptions. Someone else chimed in, oblivious to the tension. "Remember last year she brought those science kits to the school event and told everyone her dad helped pick them out. She always goes the extra mile." That comment hit differently. I hadn't bought those kits. Lydia had taken them from a donation box at my garage without asking. I'd blamed myself for not keeping better track. A cold realization settled across my shoulders. This wasn't a one-time slip. It was a pattern, and I had let it grow. Lydia must have sensed the shift because her voice sharpened as she tried to redirect the conversation. "Anyway," she said, waving a hand, "let's not talk about the shed. Dad might feel bad if he thinks he messed something up." She wanted control of the narrative. She wanted my silence to be part of the machinery that kept her version alive. I excused myself and stepped farther toward the fence. Pulling my phone out, I pretended to check a message while I opened the photos. Quietly, I snapped a picture of the shed key on my ring. Another of the bent receipt folded in my pocket. Saved them both. Then scrolled to older images, ones I'd taken of the gifts when I first bought them, still in the trunk of my truck. A plan formed, small but steady, gather everything before she touched it again. Going back into the house felt heavier. Laughter bounced off the walls, but none of it reached me. I made my way to a corner where no one noticed I was standing. When no one watched, a decision settled in: stop pretending nothing happened. Still acting too soon would only give her fuel. An older cousin of her husband stopped me as I walked past the kitchen. "You all right there, Sam?" he asked. "You seem a bit distant." "Just tired," I replied. It wasn't a lie, just incomplete. He nodded. "Family dynamics are tricky. My sister used to do stuff like that, taking credit for things." That single line landed harder than he knew. It wasn't said with judgment, just understanding. Eventually the night thinned out. Coats went on leftovers, got packed, and people said their slow goodbyes. I waited near the doorway so I wouldn't be pulled into more small talk. Before I reached my truck, my phone buzzed again. A long message from Lydia filled the screen. "Dad, I don't know why you're acting strange tonight. You embarrassed me by standing off to the side. People thought you were upset with me. I'm trying hard to keep everyone happy, but you looked like you didn't want to be there." The text kept scrolling. Paragraph after paragraph of blame disguised as worry. Another buzz, then another. Standing there beside my truck with the cold settling around me, I watched the messages stack on top of each other. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't open any of them. Chapter 4. The line crossed. Morning routines usually came easy. A pot of coffee, a quick look at the driveway, a walk to the shed to check tools before heading to the shop. That morning the rhythm broke. My shed lock didn't click open. The keypad blinked a code error. Another attempt gave the same result. One more. Nothing. A new code. Someone had changed it. Before any explanation formed in my head, my phone buzzed. Lydia's message slid across the screen. "Dad, don't worry. I changed the shed code so the kids won't wander in. Everything's safe. I'll keep your things organized until you get around to it." The words lit a heat low in my gut. Not fear, not confusion. Something firmer. She had taken the shed. The place where I stored my tools, my work, my livelihood. And she spoke as if she were doing me a favor. Another message followed. "You said I could use the spare key. You probably forgot. I'm helping." Forgot. Helping. The same tune she used when twisting anything to her advantage. The shed sat only a few feet away, close enough to touch, yet suddenly out of reach. Standing there wasn't accomplishing anything, so I locked up the house and drove straight to Lydia's. Her neighborhood looked the same as the night before, kids' bikes tipped over on lawns, porch decorations still glowing. Nothing about it hinted that a boundary had been snapped in half. When I stepped onto her porch, Lydia opened the door with a smile stretched too tight. "Dad, this is a surprise," she said. "Did you come for breakfast? We made extra." "We need to talk," I replied. She shifted, blocking part of the entry like she was guarding something. "About the shed," she said, lowering her voice. "Dad, it's fine. Honestly, you've been misplacing things, and I didn't want the kids to hurt themselves. You gave me the spare key months ago. Maybe you don't remember." Her tone carried a sweetness so forced it made my jaw twitch. "I didn't give you any key," I said. She blinked, then laughed lightly. "That's the thing, Dad. You forget these details. I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to manage everything." Her husband's cousins stood nearby in the hallway. None stepped in. They watched like people observing a stranger cause a scene in public. One of them whispered, "He's worked too many long shifts," as if that explained everything. Lydia took the chance to raise her voice. "Dad, I told everyone you've been stressed lately. It's okay. Really. I'll handle the shed for now." "Handle." She said it like she ran the property. "Open it," I said evenly. Her face froze for a beat before she launched into another performance. "Why are you being difficult? I protected your tools. I protected the kids. You always tell me to step up, and when I do, you act like I'm stealing something." A few relatives exchanged glances. She had given them just enough to view me as unreasonable. "You don't know how much I do," she pressed on. "How much I carry. You think locking a shed is a big deal? You should be grateful." Grateful. The word scraped. My phone buzzed again. Marianne's name appeared. Stepping aside, I answered. "You okay?" she asked without greeting. "No," I said quietly. "What happened?" "She changed the shed lock. Says she's protecting my things." A pause stretched long enough to steady me. "Sam, listen. Don't yell. Don't fight her story with another story. State facts. Keep your ground." Her voice held just enough weight to anchor mine. Returning to the doorway, I faced Lydia again. "I didn't give you permission to change that lock. You need to restore access." She scoffed loudly so her in-laws could hear. "You're acting controlling. Everyone can see it. I'm trying to keep things running and you're making me into the bad guy." A woman from her husband's side stepped closer. "Sam, maybe you should cool off. She's just trying to help." Another man added. "She's told us how hard it is dealing with your temper." Temper. I hadn't raised my voice once. The world tilted not violently, but enough to show how far her narrative had spread. She wasn't just twisting the story. She was handing out roles. Herself as caretaker. Me as the unreasonable one. It hit harder than anything the night before. Lydia crossed her arms. "If you really want to go look at the shed, I'll take you later. But right now, stop making a scene." "I'm not making a scene," I replied. "You're making me uncomfortable," she snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself, Dad. Everyone sees it." No one contradicted her. Not one. Marianne texted, "I'm nearby. Need me to stop by?" I typed back, "Yes." Within minutes, her car pulled up. She approached calmly, assessing the situation without inserting herself. "Morning," she said to the group. Then to me, "What's going on?" "Dad's upset about the shed," Lydia interjected. "He forgot he gave me permission to use it." Marianne turned her attention fully to my daughter. "Strange. Sam's memory is just fine at the clinic. He remembers details better than most folks." Lydia stiffened. Her relatives looked uncertain for the first time. Still, she pushed forward. "He's being rigid. He wants to control everything." A slow exhale left my chest. The shed door, the changed code, the shifting story, it all lined up too neatly. She had moved from lying to rewriting. My gaze drifted toward the street. Staying longer would only give her more room to twist. Without another word, I stepped off the porch. Lydia called after me something sharp and desperate, but the words fell away. A steady breath formed as I crossed the yard. My hand wrapped around my phone. Not shaking, not uncertain, just ready for whatever came next. Chapter 5. What finally made sense. The next day carried a heaviness that didn't lift even after I tried burying myself in work. A knock at my fence pulled me from the garage. Mr. Helton, the neighbor, 2 houses down, stood there with his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. "Sam got a minute. He rarely came over unless something mattered." I joined him near the fence gate. "I didn't want to step into family business," he began, "but you should know. Your daughter's been going into your shed a lot these past few weeks. Mostly when you're not home." My stomach sank. "How do you know?" I asked. "I was fixing my ladder out back," he said. "Saw her bring the kids with her one afternoon. They were running around near your tool bench. Some of your blades were laid out. I almost went over there, but she told me you said it was fine." A chill crept down my spine. Tools I used for engine repairs could cut straight through bone if mishandled. The thought of children running near them sent a sharp jolt through my ribs. Helton rubbed his chin. "I figured you'd want to know. Didn't look safe." A memory slammed into me, my wife years ago, stepping into the garage to bring me lunch, slipping near a jack stand I left unsecured. The paramedics tried their best. The doctor tried his. None of it mattered. I'd lived with that weight since the day I buried her. I never let anyone near my tools again without being there myself. Lydia knew that. She knew that part of me better than anyone. "Thanks," I said quietly. He nodded, gave my shoulder a brief squeeze, then left through the side gate. His footsteps faded, but the warning stayed. Driving to meet Marianne felt necessary, not optional. She had asked me to come by the small diner off Vista Avenue, a place where nurses from her clinic often grabbed lunch. The booths were cramped and the service rushed, but something about it always encouraged honesty. She was already there sipping tea. "You look like you didn't sleep," she said, as I slid into the seat. "I got new information. Bad. Worse than I thought." I told her everything Helton said. Told her about the shed, the kids near the sharp tools, the changed lock, and the web of half-truths Lydia kept weaving. Marianne leaned back, fingertips pressed together. "Sam, this isn't just about Christmas gifts anymore. It hasn't been for a while. She's crossing boundaries that could get someone hurt. Or you blamed." My jaw clenched. She wasn't wrong. "What do you think this is?" I asked. "A pattern," she said. "A long one. Taking over your space. Painting you as forgetful. Using your things to boost her image. That's not a slip-up. That's control." That word control hung in the air. "Parents forgive too much," she continued. "I see it all the time at the clinic. You call it patience. They call it opportunity." A part of me resisted her words not because they were false, but because they exposed everything I'd tried to ignore. So what now, I asked. She folded her arms. You have two options. Keep absorbing this until she walks all over you, or draw a line she can't shift or talk her way around. Choosing sounded simple. Living the consequences didn't. Before I answered, Marianne's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. Sam, look at this. She turned the screen toward me. Lydia had posted something online. A vague paragraph. Trying so hard to make the holidays special, but some people in the family want to tear everything down. Please be kind. Not everyone understands how much pressure I'm under. Comments poured in with sympathy. You're doing great. Don't let toxic relatives kill your spirit. You're the only one holding things together. My chest tightened. She wasn't hinting, she was aiming. Public perception meant everything to her. As if on cue, my phone rang. Lydia again. I answered, and her voice shook with rehearsed distress. Dad, why are you doing this? Why are you making me look bad? I'm just trying to make the kids happy. I didn't make you do anything. You're scaring me. You showed up angry. You made everyone uncomfortable. Why can't you just support me for once? Her words hit like practiced lines. Marianne watched me with steady eyes, her presence keeping me grounded. You changed my shed lock, I said calmly. I had to, she cried. I'm drowning trying to handle everything and you're attacking me over nothing. You're pushing me away. The call dissolved into accusations and pleas. Each sentence twisted the truth, turning everything upside down until her version almost sounded believable if I hadn't lived the real story. When she paused long enough for breath, I said, I'll talk later, and ended the call before she pulled me deeper into the spiral. Silence lingered between me and Marianne for several seconds. She's tightening her hold, Marianne said, but you don't have to let her. Back home, the decision settled low and steady like a weight that finally found its place. I pulled the receipts from my glove compartment, spread them across the kitchen table. The photos I'd taken of the shed, the gifts, the old codes, all of it formed a trail of truth. Piece by piece, they came together into something undeniable. For the first time since this began, I wasn't trying to manage the situation. I was preparing to confront it. The stack of documents grew thicker beneath my hands. Chapter 6. The Cold Preparation. The kitchen table stayed covered in receipts and screenshots, but most of the real work happened in the garage. That space had always been my anchor oil stains on the concrete drawers full of parts shelves lined with years of routine. It felt steadier than the rest of my life just then. Pulling up my bank records, I traced every purchase tied to the gifts. Dates and times, store locations, UPC codes. Each printout went into a folder. Photos of the shed before anything was moved went into another. A third folder held the ones from afterward boxes, missing tools, rearranged the lock, tampered with. Recording Helton's account took more effort. I wrote down his words exactly as he'd said them, kept it factual. Marianne had insisted on that. Stick to verifiable details, she'd told me over the phone. Emotion gives her room to twist. Facts take that away. Hours slipped by while I sorted everything. The garage door stayed cracked open for air. Every so often a car rolled past on the street. Each sound pulled my attention to the possibility of someone watching. Marianne arrived in the afternoon. She stepped into the garage, scanned the piles of paperwork, then nodded. Good, she said. This is organized. It's a start. She pulled over an old metal stool and sat beside me. We went through every item. Keep these, she said, tapping the receipts. They're clean. And these photos great. They show a time sequence. What about the messages? I handed her my phone. Save all of them. Screenshots. And forward them to a backup email in case she deletes something later or tries to rewrite what she said. Her competence steadied me. The more we worked, the clearer the situation became. Lydia hadn't acted out of confusion or stress. She'd built a structure, one that left me painted as forgetful, unstable, unreasonable, and she intended to keep it that way. Marianne paused when we reached the note about the kids near the blades. This one, she said, matters more than any gift. It shows risk. If anything had happened to those children, you would have been held responsible. The truth of it sat heavily between us. Before we could continue, a car rolled into my driveway. Evan stepped out, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He looked like a man who had rehearsed a speech he didn't want to give. Marianne moved aside, giving us space. Evan approached slowly. "Sam, can we talk?" I didn't answer until he reached the workbench. "What do you need?" He swallowed, eyes darting to the papers scattered on the table. "Look, Lydia's been upset. Really upset. She says you're coming down on her too hard. She changed my lock. She said it was temporary," he insisted. "Just until things settle down. That's not her decision to make." He ran a hand over his face, looking older than he should at his age. "We're all under pressure, you know. Holidays money the kids. She doesn't always think things through. But dragging this out, it's making things tense. People are talking, so I'm the problem." I didn't say that. He hesitated. "But maybe just let it go for the family's sake. No one needs to know the details." There it was. Confirmation without saying the word. He knew she'd twisted the story. He knew she had gone too far. But convenience mattered more than truth. "Evan," I said slowly, "did she tell you she took the kids into the shed?" His expression shifted, and the guilt rose instantly. "I told her not to," he muttered. "She said it was fine. Said you wouldn't mind." Marianne stepped forward then. "She could have seriously hurt those kids," she said sharply. Evan lowered his head. "We'll make sure it won't happen again. Just, please don't embarrass her. She's fragile right now." My patience snapped one thread at a time. "This isn't about embarrassment. It's about boundaries and safety." His gaze hardened, defensive, cornered. "If you push her, she'll break. She told the family you're being controlling. They believe her. Don't escalate this." He left before either of us could respond. Marianne exhaled. "Fragile," she repeated. "That's the shield every manipulator hides behind." Work resumed, but Evan's words hung in the room. Tension pressed in on every movement. By early evening, fatigue settled deep in my bones. I stepped inside to grab more paper. When I returned to the garage, something felt off. Not wrong, just shifted. The documents on the table had moved. A few pages lay out of order. The photos I printed earlier had been flipped upside down. Even the pen I'd left on the right edge of the folder now rested in the center. Marianne noticed it too. "Did you touch these?" she asked. "No." We exchanged a look that didn't need explanation. Someone had come through the garage while I was inside. A vibration buzzed from my pocket. A text message with no contact name. "Stop digging. Don't make him look bad." Attached was a photo of my truck parked outside Lydia's house the day before, taken from across the street. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed level. "She's escalating. You need to secure everything," Marianne said, her tone firm. Work accelerated after that. Evidence got scanned, labeled, and uploaded to a cloud account. A USB drive filled with copies went into a locked drawer built into my tool chest. When we finished, Marianne squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Sam. Truth doesn't hide." She left soon after. I stood alone in the garage, facing the wall of tools that had kept me grounded for decades. Wrenches, clamps, carburetor kits all lined neatly, except for one shelf on the left, where Lydia had rearranged things weeks ago. Seeing her touch in that space, a place she had no right to alter, tightened something deep in my chest. Another thread snapped. Chapter 7. The Break Point. The message came early before I even finished tightening the bolts on a customer's engine. Lydia's name filled the screen, followed by a string of words that stopped everything around me. "Dad, all the Christmas gifts belong to our house. I organized the party. I handled everything. I'll keep them or toss them depending on what's actually useful. You didn't respect me, so don't expect me to protect your feelings anymore." A second message appeared before I could react. "Don't show up demanding things. I'm done being treated like nothing." The room around me dimmed into background noise. Those gifts weren't just items. They were time, thought, and money I quietly saved. She was claiming ownership in a way that went far beyond holiday drama. Something fundamental had shifted. She had crossed over from taking to threatening. I grabbed my coat and keys. No hesitation. This wasn't something to discuss over text. Her neighborhood sat too calm for what I carried with me. As I walked toward the porch, shouting erupted from inside the house. Evan burst out first, nearly colliding with me. "Sam, wait, don't start anything," he said, both palms raised. "She's upset. Just give her time." "I'm here to talk," I replied. Before he could answer, Lydia stormed through the doorway. Her voice tore across the yard. "Why are you here? Didn't I tell you not to come? You're making everything worse." One of her neighbors peeked from their porch. Another stepped outside with their dog, pretending not to stare. Lydia saw the attention and pushed her performance further. "Stop coming over here like this," she shouted. "You're scaring me." Evan tried to pull her back, whispering, "Lyd, please not like this," but she shoved his arm away. I stayed rooted to the sidewalk, jaw tight but voice steady. "I came because you threatened to throw away things that don't belong to you." "Oh my God," she snapped, hands flying upward. "You're obsessed with things. This is why I can't talk to you. You twist everything." Her husband's cousin rushed out next, stepping between us like a referee. "Sam, she's under a lot of pressure. Maybe you should back off. She says you've been on edge lately. You're making her feel unsafe." Unsafe. That word carried weight, and she used it like a weapon. More relatives emerged, forming a half circle around Lydia. Their expressions held confusion, caution, judgment. It looked like an intervention aimed at the wrong person. The moment pressed down on me, a kind of suffocating tension that wanted me to break, to yell, to lash out, anything that could validate her story. But I didn't move. I opened the folder I brought and pulled out the first document, the original receipt for the gifts. "Here's the transaction record," I said. "Date, time, purchase, ID." Lydia froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. Next, I held up the photo of the shed the day I bought everything. "These are the gifts. In my truck, in my shed, right where I put them." Her eyes darted from the photo to the people behind her. I continued, calm and deliberate. "And here's the picture I took after they were moved without my permission." A murmur moved through the group. Evan stepped back, shoulders caving, as the truth settled on him. "And this," I said, pulling out the small notebook page, "is the statement from a neighbor who saw you enter my shed while I wasn't home. With the kids, near my tools." Lydia lunged forward, voice cracking. "You're twisting everything. You're making me look insane." "You wrote that text this morning," I answered, lifting my phone. "You said you'd toss or keep the gifts however you wanted." Her face drained. Several relatives leaned toward each other, whispering. Her performance sputtered. The room she once controlled with emotion now worked against her. Evan rubbed his forehead. "Lydia, did you really go into his shed like that?" She stumbled over her words. I was helping. He forgets things. He needs support." One of her aunts shook her head. "No, honey. This doesn't look like helping." Another relative muttered. "Why would you threaten to throw out gifts? What's wrong with you?" The shift in the crowd happened fast, confusion, turning into disappointment, into disapproval. It washed over Lydia until she stood alone in the judgment she had hoped to redirect at me. She stepped back toward the door, eyes flaring between rage and panic. "Dad, how could you do this to me?" Her question hung in the air with no weight behind it. No one stepped toward her. Not even Evan. I closed the folder gently, aligning the edges with my thumb, and held it at my side. Nothing more needed saying. Not from me. Not to her. The street remained still, except for the wind brushing past the fence. A few relatives backed away from Lydia, shaking their heads, murmuring under their breath. Evan stayed frozen by the porch steps, caught between defending his wife and acknowledging the truth laid out in front of him. My hand tightened around the folder's spine. Then I turned, walking toward my truck at an even pace. The sound of the folder's clasp clicking shut echoed softly as I slid it onto the passenger seat. Chapter 8, After the Storm. The morning after everything unraveled, the house felt different. Not lighter. Not heavier. Just real. A kind of stillness that comes when a long illusion finally shatters. I changed the locks first. Front door, back door, side gate. The shed keypad followed. New code, new hardware, new rules. The metal clicked into place with a sound that settled something in me. A boundary redrawn with tools instead of arguments. The spare keys Lydia once slipped into her purse were collected when Evan dropped them off. He didn't linger. His eyes stayed low, shoulders slumped. "She needs time," he said quietly. "That's up to her," I replied. He nodded, then left without another word. The financial part came next. Transfers stopped. Auto payments I'd covered for her were canceled. A simple phone call ended every line that tied my wallet to her household. No speech, no guilt trip, just a firm decision. For the first time in years, I wasn't cushioning her choices with my labor. By afternoon, word spread through Lydia's extended family. People who once sang her praises started walking back their public comments. Some removed posts entirely. A few even sent me messages, short notes, saying they didn't know the full situation or shouldn't have judged so fast. The kids asked questions, too, questions that cut through every defense she tried to build. "Mom, why did you say Aunt Lydia gave us stuff Grandpa bought?" "She told us the presents came from her. Why wasn't that true?" Those questions cornered her in a way my evidence never could. Children don't negotiate truth. They repeat it. Evan later told me she cried for hours. Not because of regret, because her version of the story had collapsed in front of everyone. I didn't respond to that either. For the rest of the day, my phone buzzed every so often with half-formed explanations, apologies tangled with accusations, and long messages begging me not to turn my back on family. None were answered. Silence this time wasn't avoidance. It was a line. Marianne stopped by the garage around dusk, carrying a styrofoam container from the diner. She set it on the workbench and leaned against the cabinet, arms folded. So she asked, "What's the plan now?" Her tone wasn't prying. It held something steady respect, maybe. Curiosity, too. "I'll go back to work," I said. "Finish the jobs I pushed aside. And I think I'll take the weekend off. Haven't gone hiking by the river in years." "Good." She pushed the food closer to me. "You deserve something that isn't crisis management." The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. "Feels strange not bracing for the next thing she'll do." "That's what boundaries feel like," she answered. Uncomfortable at first, then natural. We talked a bit longer. Small things, nothing heavy. When she left, the garage door rattled behind her, and the space returned to the calm it used to hold. No tension, no intrusion. Just the hum of a life that belonged to me again. Later that night, I walked through the shed one more time. The shelves stood as they should. Tools hung exactly where I left them. No foreign touches, no rearranged drawers, no boxes shoved into corners for someone else's use. The order steadied my breathing. On the small workbench drawer, the USB drive waited, everything organized, labeled, and backed up. Not a weapon, not leverage. Just truth kept in one place. I slid the drawer open, placed the drive neatly inside, and turned the key. The lock clicked with a clean, final sound. Not victory, not revenge, just closure. Then I stepped back, wiped the dust off my hands, and let the night settle around me as naturally as breath. Everything felt like it had returned to where it belonged.